Welcome to One School, One Planet podcast episode 4, continuing our conversations on the fertile edges of permaculture, ecology and education. We're back at Cae Bodfach Community Garden this week to catch up with the GCSE Land-Based Studies students from Llanfyllin High School who are going to be planting another 13 fruit trees to go into our orchard here. The students are joined by Dewi Morris of the Seven Rivers Trust and the Montgomeryshire Wildlife Trust and various other organisations, and Tom the Apple Man, who is an expert in apple cultivation and who looks after a wonderful orchard in Western Ryn. While we're here, me and Steve are going to be constructing a circular bed in the middle of our medicinal herb garden. The circular bed will serve as a kind of protective space for some of the more delicate herbs that we're going to be planting in there over the coming weeks. The idea for the medicinal herb garden is that it'll become a really abundant, fruitful space full of different kinds of herbs that we can then transplant out into the fields surrounding the area, so we can try to bring back some of that rich variety of native herbs that has been lost over the last 100 years or so. In this episode we also have an interview with Dewi Morris, who, as I already mentioned, works for various wildlife trusts and conservation trusts, about his work with the students and about the work that's been done at Cae Bodfach. And we also have a short interview with Emyr Jones, who is actually the leader of the GCSE Land-Based Studies course at Llanfyllin High School. So we hope you enjoy the show.
Yes, that noise you can hear in the background is Land-Based Studies, year, I think it's 11.
Yeah.
Hammering in the post to accompany the heritage variety of apple trees supplied by Tom, the apple man, who's got this beautiful orchard in Western Ryn.
Uh-huh.
And we're planting 13 more trees, which makes we've planted 27 trees to extend this lovely community garden.
Yeah.
But they're not just ordinary trees; they're heritage varieties of trees which have been commonly used for production of cider and perry in Montgomeryshire.
Okay.
So it's like a heritage library.
Amazing.
Nobody grows these trees because they're not commercially viable in commercial orchards. So we've created like a DNA gene bank of these beautiful old tree varieties.
Yeah. It's incredible.
But they're not just trees on their own. They're standing here, surrounded by blackcurrants and raspberries and comfrey and all sorts of manner of plants and what have you, because we're actually transforming this very field from a very marginal hay field to a whole, well, it's going to be a nature reserve and a forest garden based on permaculture principles.
That's lovely. So can you show us around a little bit, maybe point out some things?
Oh, mind the butterfly.
Yeah.
This butterfly was made with the money from the Arwain, who paid the Montgomeryshire Wildlife Trust money to engage young people with the environment.
Okay.
So they made a beautiful butterfly made out of CDs and acts as a beautiful piece of art within the garden.
That's nice, yeah.
Cool. And let's go a little bit further into the older bit of the orchard.
So this was the first part that was planted?
Yeah, in the older bit of the orchard, it's doing what the forest garden is meant to be doing, is that now we're surrounded by raspberry canes and blackcurrant bushes, and these raspberry canes have crept outwards from when they were originally planted in a fruit tree guild, which is a circle of plants, all acting to complement each other. Like the forest garden, like in the permaculture principles. Yeah. So as the tree grows, the guilds grow, and you can see it in action now. It's surrounded by the first of the early butterflies. Yeah. Like little tortoiseshell.
Seen a lot of little ladybirds around as well.
Yeah, ladybirds, it's a very special place. And this is the last day, which we've squeezed out of the season because this season was pretty horrible and rainy. Yeah. And for the people from the Land-Based Studies to plant the trees. So I've been working with Tom, whose expertise is in trees. Yeah. And these are the last of the trees for this orchard in this particular year.
Do you do a lot of work with kids from the school?
Yeah, it's been hard work actually getting them engaged and getting the kids out here, but this Cae Bodfach Community Garden has proved to the staff member and staff members that come here that it's actually got huge value for an educational value.
Yeah.
Because lots of the units within land-based studies are to do with environmental agricultural schemes, and here we are in a agricultural field transforming it into a valuable community food and fuel resource.
Yeah.
And a DNA heritage library of trees. So it's pretty amazing, really.
Really good.
Well, we've been here probably over 4 or 5 years now. So we started with the planting of the trees, and then we put the fruit tree guilds in and everything else, which is very useful on the course we do, because we have to do habitat sustainability and habitat management and everything else like that. So it fits ideally into this. Most of these students are agricultural based, but as the agriculture industry is moving on now, there's more and more emphasis on habitat management and estate maintenance and stuff like that.
It's the way it's got to go, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially if we're going to meet the Paris Climate Agreement targets.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, the payments will be there for, planting new trees and looking after your hedges and everything else. So,
so farmers will become more like wardens of the environment.
Absolutely, yeah. Agriculture incomes have taken a real, they're heading south over a number of years now.
Yeah.
And if they are to, I think there's a government paper out the other day that we could lose 25% of agriculture units within the next 2-3 years, I think, or something like that. So if people are to remain out in the countryside, we'll have to look at these alternative, income streams, and it's on the ball what we're doing here, really.
That's really good, yeah.
It fits into everything.
What do you think are the benefits of actually getting, because obviously we're really lucky to be here in the countryside, but I mean, how much do kids actually get out into the field to do things like this?
Well, I try to take them as often as I can. We have a double lesson every week, so I'm usually out in reasonable weather.
Yeah.
From habitat work here, we do some estate maintenance, we do some river work with them, we do planting trees out on farms and everything else. Mm-hmm. So I try to take them out as much as I can.
Yeah.
Because it is important that they have this aspect of the.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these, we wouldn't spend a lot of time outside anyway, out on farms and everything else, so.
That's it. It seems strange that we live in the countryside.
Yet.
It's difficult to get people out into the countryside.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's all to do with the school curriculum as well. We squeeze as much as we can. We have to do the numeracy and the literacy and, 100 other things as well. It's hard to get the time to do, possibly, even more important stuff which needs to be done.
One of the things we've been trying to do with this project is to basically try and write a textbook, a permaculture textbook, but our approach is kind of cross-disciplinary. So the idea is that you could have a textbook that you could use for across the whole school. You could use it in English, you could use it in maths and things.
All the way across the curriculum, really.
Yeah, do you think something like that would be...
That would be great, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
because there's increasing emphasis in schools on that now. That we have to integrate everything together.
Yeah.
And then there's a new curriculum coming out in 2022, I think, or something like that. So where everything has to be interlinked, if you like. So it'll be ideal if we can get this into there by then.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much. You also do work along the riverbanks, don't you?
Oh yes. So as well as the community garden aspect, there's the River Cain winds its way through here.
Yeah.
And in Welsh it means Cain is fair, and it's an amazing river because it supports a large population of Atlantic salmon who enjoy swimming all the way from up from Bristol and Gloucester, Worcester, Shrewsbury, etc., all the way up here and past here and spawning in its really clean gravels. Wow. Because we haven't got the fields surrounding here aren't used for arable purposes, and so there's not a lot of soil and sediment and nitrate fertilisers that go into the river here. Mm-hmm. Therefore the river bed itself, the sediment, isn't joined together with loads of algae or sediment.
So it's really...
So the salmon it is clean and lovely. So that when the salmon lay their eggs upstream of here, which is quite amazing, the eggs stay within the underneath the sediment, and the water that goes through it is oxygenated, clean, and ideal breeding ground for Atlantic salmon. So it's got global links. And I've been doing World Fish Migration Week this week with Llanfyllin Primary School, and they came out to this site and river dipped and found about all the invertebrates and found out that this field is actually linked to the globe.
Yeah, it's amazing, really.
It's incredible, yeah. And also just across the other side of here is there's 900. No, it's about 1,000 trees. There's 1,000 trees which were planted as a what's it called? A wild food mix. So it's got lots of berry trees. So there's rowan and blackthorn and hawthorn and rose and all sorts of the tree species mainly to actually produce lots of berries. So we transformed that other half of this field into a bio-rich, food-rich field for wildlife. And because it's the other side of the river, it naturally excludes members of the public from it.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect little reserve.
Yeah, so it's got a nature reserve opposite this community garden.
Yeah.
And it's got the beautiful river going through it, and we as well as doing World Fish Migration Day, we do teach these land-based studies about woody debris in controlling rivers by trees and excluding livestock from the river banks to reduce nitrates and poaching and sediment and so it's about. So we've used this whole field complex for many educational reasons, and it's great because it's just walkable from the school.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much.
So we're just having a thought really about how interconnected these systems are, these ecosystems. So we're in the upper Severn Valley. We're on the banks of the River Cain that drains into the Vyrnwy, which drains into the Severn, which goes all the way down to Bristol. Yeah. So the fish that are coming up here to spawn, salmon and trout, have swum here all the way up the Bristol Channel, all the way up the Severn, up the Vyrnwy into the Cain River Valley.
It's incredible.
To here. It's incredible to think. So also think about that, is that the nutrients that they represent, that they're bringing from the sea in their physical bodies.
Yeah.
They come up here, and once they've spawned, many of them die, they're eaten, so the phosphates in the fish literally then flash out into the landscape, which is what's feeding the plants, and building the nutrition of our farmlands. And then when the trees drop their leaves in the winter, some of those get washed down out to the sea again. Yeah. It's a whole big interconnected system.
It's incredible to think, because this is really quite an inland area, isn't it? Well, but to think that this inland ecosystem is directly connected with the ecosystem of the Atlantic Ocean, which obviously is connected to the rest of the oceans and the rest of the world.
And there's an active exchange of nutrients and a genetic material and all sorts of different things going on between us and this sort of it's extraordinary to think of it in those terms. That's why the quality of the water here is so important. So those fish are coming back to find places where they spawned, and they've never been back since they were a little fingerling, a little baby fish. So the chemical, mineral composition, taste, oxygen in the water is absolutely essential. That's what the chemical signals that the fish are tuning into. Yeah. And of course they lay their eggs in gravel beds. So if those gravel beds are choked with algae from farm runoff, or if we've got nutrient runoff from farms, or we've got particulates, mud and silts and things that are washing off again from agricultural land and roads, then they don't recognise the environment and they can't lay their eggs there. So it gets very, very ecologically sensitive, and just absolutely interconnected. So what we're doing here is in no small way. It's a tiny little area and just a few people doing their thing, but it's part of this bigger system. And that's part of what we want the kids to appreciate. Yeah.
This systems way of thinking is really fundamental to the permaculture approach, realising through observing and interacting with the natural world that individual elements, including ourselves, are fundamentally interconnected and interdependent. And actually, it's been the tendency of our industrial society to ignore this fact that has led to the eco-crisis we are currently facing on a global scale. During our teaching sessions at the high school, we introduced students to a famous quote from Albert Einstein, where he suggests that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. This systems view is precisely the kind of new, or actually perhaps very old way of thinking that can help us to reverse some of the damage we've done to our environment. We can redesign agricultural systems that are in tune with the systems view of life, for example, systems that are aware of their impacts and dependence upon the rest of the biosphere. We could also design educational curricula in accordance with the systems view, which I think is what Emyr was getting at in our short discussion. And actually our One School, One Planet programme attempts to do just this, making clear the connections between different academic disciplines and demonstrating how they can all be put to work in the service of regenerating our badly damaged ecology. Through encouraging the students who come down to the community garden to realise that the work they do, no matter how insignificant it may seem on the surface, is directly linked to the health of our water systems, the prosperity of migrating salmon, and then on to the ecologies of our seas and oceans, this kind of broader perspective can hopefully be fostered in the students. They need to realise that their actions are significant, that they can and do make a difference to the world, that as individuals they are part of a community of living and non-living elements that binds us all together. This is the understanding of the world that grounds the work of the One School, One Planet project. So it's interesting how, over the course of this episode, the focus has kind of shifted towards thinking about guilds and systems and interconnected projects.
Yeah, no, very much so, which is really, I mean, as you alluded to earlier, is at the heart of permaculture. It's understanding that actually nothing exists in isolation, and ecology is all about relationships between things. It's not about the thing, it's about the relationship. Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. And so we're sat back in the Sector 39 office, and I started thinking about how, in fact, we're forming a guild ourselves in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So Jack and I have come together to work on this project, and we're doing that under the banner of Sector 39. It's a small independent training organisation, and we rent an office from Dragons Cooperative, which is another, if you like, guild of people who've coming together. Mm-hmm. Having that base, having the legal structure of Sector 39 and the sort of group of people that we have around us, and we've had input from a lot of other people. And that's enabled us to win some investment. Mm-hmm. We got a grant from the Welsh Government over the last 2 years, which helped us develop our work in Uganda, which has been massively, hugely positive experience. And the money that's funding the One School, One Planet project, that comes from EU for their rural development programme, managed by Arwine. So we should give credit to them as well, because we wouldn't kind of be here without them. Mm-hmm. So thinking about then how we're using those resources is we're trying to also nourish the system, if you like, of the guild around us. So whether it's we're putting time and energy into the school, it's enabled us to put some time and energy into the community garden, physically into the landscape, working with those kids, but also we're paying a bit of rent money to the housing co-op. We're helping share the bills and the internet connection and all of that sort of stuff. So it's another kind of guild formation. Yeah. We've created an ecosystem of our own.
So the way we're working is that every little thing that we do has got multiple outputs, basically. We can feed into other projects. Other projects seem to overlap with the work that we're doing, like the work that Dewi does at the orchard with the kids. It all seems to be connected in a really fruitful, nice way.
Yeah, and coming back to the whole lot about permaculture and understanding systems, the question is, how do you build a system? How do you, when you understand that everything's interconnected, where do you start? Mm-hmm. It's a really, really interesting process. Yeah. And for us, Sector 39, it's been going on for a long time. We've started thinking about this, dare I say it, 25 years ago. Yeah. That's a terrifying thought. But realising, that was a momentous realisation at the time. And slowly, we've sort of
woven this web. And actually, we set up 5 housing co-ops in that time.
Yep.
And I don't know how many gardens we planted, and we've run. I've lost now count of how many permaculture design courses we've run. I think it's 36.
Wow.
We've reached literally hundreds and hundreds of people with these ideas, and then those people, sometimes I haven't heard from them for 10 years, and I suddenly, out of the blue, I discover that they're head of the Norwegian Refugee Council for Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, or I don't know. They start the mycelium, these connections that we've created, of flourishing in other places.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about Newtown yet. We haven't talked about Cwmharri. We haven't talked about the what is now the Cultivate project, which is an organic horticulture training centre in Newtown that was actually helped develop from ideas from a permaculture course that we ran in Llanfyllin in 2010. It's another, if you like, node propagating the same ideas.
Enmeshed within the project.
Yeah. This is how we this is how we win. This is how we solve the problem. You can't run at it tilting at windmills sort of Don Quixote style. I always say permaculture is about doing things. We can come up with a clever rationale about it afterwards, but we've got to actually begin things. We've got to get out there and do things, even if we don't quite know exactly sure what we're doing, because we learn by mistakes anyway. Permaculture says start small, pay a lot of attention, and if it works, then allow it to grow, but keep reinvesting any surplus back into the system, and so it will grow of its own accord organically.
Yeah.
And if it's interesting, other people will copy it and they'll replicate it, but they won't do it the same because they're different as individuals. They're different. They'll be doing it in a slightly different place, a different soil, different whatever,
different cultures.
So this guild thinking, systems thinking, interconnectivity makes you an active component in your world rather than a passive consumer or a helpless prole in this big faceless system. Is no. You matter. Not only that, is every single action, every single thing that you do matters, and it has the possibility to create ripple effects that literally will go around the globe. So in the same way we were talking about the salmon coming up the river and thinking about metaphorically how we are, actually not metaphorically, absolutely physically really linked to this amazing global system, So I think part of that shift is to make everybody feel empowered and to understand that, of course, every single thing you do matters. Everything you do sends out a ripple and will affect those Atlantic salmon or the, this web of life that we're all woven into. Yeah. Okay, we're damaging the biosphere because of, bad physics and chemistry and biology. We've got the wrong relationship with this living planet.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's a technical and scientific issue that has to be solved. But actually, it's 20 years of trying to roll out technological and scientific solutions has got us kind of nowhere, because the problem at the heart is our own way of understanding our relationship with this living planet, and also with each other. Yeah. We've created this consumerist, linear, throwaway, materialistic society, and it's really it's not working. It worked for a bit, but the problems that it's caused are now so enormous, it threatens our very existence.
Yeah. The real change is going to be a cultural change, or you could even go so far as to say a change in consciousness.
So it's really interesting how, almost our two fields of interest actually interlink directly, which is, I've always come at it from the biological angle. I was the one, thinking about the ecosystem connections and functions and stuff. Yeah. And you've come at it from the how do people think kind of perspective, if I'm summarising that correctly. But, and obviously these things totally interconnect. And how we understand what is our place in this world, within this living system, that's what has to shift and change, and that comes from a much deeper place than training people how to recycle cans or whatever.
Yeah. I think in the work that we're doing, because obviously we're doing education work, we're trying to encourage the students to think in different ways as well, but the really important thing is actually getting the kids out into the field, making that connection and building their relationship up with their natural environments. So
I mean, it literally, I love the sound effects in your clip when you're speaking to Dewi of them hammering the posts in the background and the children's voices is, there you go, there's actually physically building those links and connections between the kids and the landscape. They're never going to feel the same way about that field again. They're going to notice it, and they're going to notice hopefully the development and flourishing of those trees, enjoy the fruits maybe,
point it out to their friends as parents as they're walking past or on the bus driving past.
And the reality is that their kids, their grandkids even, could be enjoying the fruits of that forest. I mean, there's something tangible about it.